On today's episode of The Truth About the Martial Arts Business, we're going to learn the truth about the self-defense business and self-defense as a whole. Our special guest today is Chris Sutton from Cobra Self-Defense. And Chris, right off the bat, why should we listen to you tell us what the myths and misconceptions about self-defense are?
Well, I did it for a living, so I practiced it my whole life. The P word, practiced. Early 80s, I started in the martial arts, did, like I said, every martial art I could. You were one of my first instructors, even on TV when I couldn't go to a school. I trained and trained and trained and punched and kicked and did everything, and every kata, whatever it was. And then when I became a deputy sheriff and I had to actually contain a violent criminal, it did not feel the same. Certain elements were there. Now, to be clear, if I throw a knee strike in class and I throw a knee strike on a human being, it's still a knee strike and it can be effective. But there's a lot of different elements there. So one of the things that when you're learning about self-defense, a lot of people are leaving. When I say a lot of people, the industry as a whole is leaving a huge element out. Most classes start like this. All right, let's warm up. Let's get on deck. Punch, kick, watch this technique. Look at this move. When we teach our clients or our students, they need to sit down and understand what's real. If you don't know what criminal intent is, if you don't know the three-part formula that every criminal has over even a police officer, if you don't know about soft targets and profiling, action versus reaction gap, these are all reality-based principles that I had to learn on the job. And I always say that cops don't train to lose. So if something goes bad in the field and a cop gets hurt or killed, you go back to the drawing board and you get to hear it. Guys, we don't do this for this reason, like an empty magazine. So the magazine that goes into a firearm, if you find a police officer with an empty magazine clipped into his magazine pouch, what does that mean? And they ask you that. Well, he did what he did in training. In training, he emptied his magazine, put it away, and when he looked down, he did that in the field in a shootout, and he got shot. So at the range, putting away an empty magazine didn't work out in the field. So let's change our tactics. So you're always evolving as a police officer, as a tactician. Every single day you're deployed. 8 hours of contact with strangers and problems. And you have to know how to manage that with all your weapons. They call you a weapons management system. Your mouth, your gun, your baton, your OC spray, your car, and how you talk, your body language, and even your uniform can be weaponized. They talk to criminals all the time, and that's the other insight, understanding what a real criminal is. So they talk to criminals all the time, and they ask, why didn't you attack that officer as opposed to this one? I didn't think I could take him. His uniform was sharp, never took his eyes off me, all his brass was polished. The other deputy, he looked frazzled, wrinkled. So even weaponizing your uniform, how you look, is self-defense. And when I tell people all the time, if you're teaching self-defense, punch and kick is great, but if your audience doesn't know that basically you can't get a cell phone out of a bag like you think you can. If you are carrying around a concealed weapons permit and you think that's the holy grail, it's not, and we'll show you why. If you think you're going to use pepper spray against someone and it's going to be effective, generally it's not, and we'll show you why. And we do it in orientation with actual organic members from the audience. So one thing that we don't do in Cobra is demonstrate with another instructor because that's scripted and rehearsed. We'll pull someone out of the audience and show this is real and this is not.
That is a key point because so often martial arts demonstrations of self-defense include rehearsed play acting scenarios where the child kicks the adult and the adult grabs his stomach, jumps in the air and falls to the ground. And it's a fake fight.
Correct.
And it's fake reactions and the atmosphere is completely different than reality. You, however, as I've witnessed many times, in the Cobra program, you teach instructors how to recreate I guess you could say, pour in the adrenal stress element to any drill that you do.
Correct.
How is that done? Because we don't see it done almost anywhere else.
Let me give you an example that I pull straight from law enforcement. I was in training, so we're working with all other cops. And I pull over this vehicle, and we all have our gear on because we're using simunition rounds, which is glorified paintball. They're putting you in a live scenario. This is a felony traffic stop. I get out as a lead officer. I take cover, and I try to order the driver out. Well, he gets out, and someone gets out of the back with a baby. Now, the baby's not real. It's a fake baby. I go around my vehicle, I shoot the guy in the head. He falls to the ground and he shoots the baby 3 times. My sergeant's yelling at me. He's saying, "What next, Sutton? Clear the vehicle. Do you call an ambulance? Who do you help first? Do you help the child? Is the child alive?" I thought because I shot that guy that the scenario was over, but they kept playing it up. And what it is taking your mind in 3 different directions, and you have to make the best decision, the best calculated decision for that situation. And law enforcement uses that model, and because it's the most effective way to cut down the learning curve. Learning curve is if you're hitting a bag 700 times, it's different when someone's got a helmet on and they're yelling and screaming and throwing cards at you and asking you to, do certain things. So the mind goes, this is real. I'm in a real situation, and it locks onto that technique a lot more than I'm just hitting a bag. So scenario training is a huge ingredient in what we do, but we take care of the student. And a lot of programs I've seen and heard from students and instructors, lots of foul language, hurting the student. Someone ends up bloody and broken.
And embarrassed.
Yeah. You've been through an actual academy. The first scenario you go through is about 16 seconds long. Feels like a roller coaster ride. It's crazy. It's fun, but there's almost no contact. That's by design.
The tension in the air is palatable. You can feel the students. Holy cow! And just as you described, there's no contact. There's no techniques. Your job is to run here. You knee this bag. You elbow this pad. Somebody yells out a color. You have to remember that color, run over and touch the bad guy here. He's not going to touch you back, but he is going to chase you into this little room, which is used with body shields and chairs. We're pretending this is the room. And then you get in the room, and then you call 911. People freak.
Yeah, they're called attention diversion drills. So you can do this. You can do this with your child. Have them, if they remember the phone number, and parents, it blows their mind when I tell them your child probably can't remember things under stress. Oh no, little Johnny knows the phone number, and he knows grandma's number, and he knows the address. So we get them to say it before we start the scenario, and of course they can say it. And then all we have them do is untie a knot that's laying on the ground while we're yelling and chasing them. They run around 3 cones. They go into a fake room. They go into a bag. And then we run over and play 911. 911, what's your emergency? What's your address? What's your address? What's your name? What's your mom's name? And they shut down and they can't remember it. The second time they do it, much better, no problem. The mind got used to it. And I always tell people, your mind is, it's easily tricked. So have you ever driven somewhere where you've never been before and it feels like you're taking forever? The second time you do it, your mind, it's a lot faster. That's because your mind doesn't like to be unfamiliar with things. So the first time you're in a self-defense situation and you've been practicing it forever, it's unfamiliar. So we kind of recreate a little bit of chaos so the student walks out with immediate benefit. I went through so many schools, some great, some bad, but I never liked the feeling of walking out that door that night going, I don't even know if I learned anything. He had me sitting on a horse for 30 minutes and we stretched for 20. I don't know if I could handle myself. And that was a big element to me. Martial arts is about getting in shape, getting your mind right, having a goal. And we put all those in Cobra. There's goals. You graduate. You get your certificate. But I want people to walk out with immediate value. Immediate value. So in the first 45 minutes of any presentation in Cobra, people don't even get out of their chairs. They sit and they learn about criminals, what they're looking for, soft targets, why you're a soft target. We download new software before we can ever train them, because teaching someone kick and punch is easy. I want you to be reprogrammed, from Apple to Windows or vice versa, whatever it is. But if they come in, and most people come in saying, I got a concealed weapons permit, I'll punch you in the face with my ring, I got my pepper spray, this is a good one, real estate agents, I got an app. Oh, really? What does the app do? Well, when I hit it, it takes a panoramic picture of the whole room and sends an emergency alert to law enforcement. And then as a self-defense professional, I can qualify that by saying, what are you guys going to be doing for the next 11 to 12 minutes? What does that mean? Well, that's the average response time for the police department. You guys going to watch a movie, have dinner? So when they realize, I do have to use my hands. And that's why you have to be able to physically defend yourself. When people rely on a gun, we show them how hard it is to get a gun out under duress.
I started training in 1974. I was a complete addict. I'd spend the nights at the school and train. I knew from day one I was going to do this for the rest of my life. And I came up in a great school, widely renowned. But it wasn't until the late 1990s at dinner with Peyton Quinn of Rimcat, did anyone ever mention to me the concept or the reality of adrenal stress? And he and Bill Kipp were doing Easy Defense in Rimcat at the time. No one had ever mentioned that to me. In all the training that I had, in all the self-defense classes that I taught, and I hesitate to call them self-defense classes because they were just silly stuff that my Taekwondo instructor believed in and I inherited. And when I saw you, the first time I saw you was I was watching my children in your school's class. You weren't teaching the class. And sitting with my wife, Janet, and you came out and taught an anti-abduction segment for about 10 minutes. And I turned to my wife and I said, holy cow, that's the best I've ever seen. And we then enrolled into the 10-week academy. I learned more in that 10-week academy than I did in the previous 35 to 40 years of training with Joe Louis on down. The best of the best of the best. What is missing from martial arts that Cobra has?
I will tell you this. I'm going to give you an example that everyone can lock onto. When people say, well, what is self-defense versus martial arts? If there's a brain surgeon and an RN, a registered nurse, they're both in the what? Medical field. We're in the combatives field. We're in the training field. If the nurse starts to do the job of the brain surgeon, we got a problem. And vice versa. This is one of the only industries where you can, and this is a real conversation I had with a guy. He said, I'm a 7th degree black belt. I created my own style. You're a 7th degree in your own style. How does testing work? And he goes, I'm a lone wolf and I just want to use your material. So we get a lot of these different conversations. What is missing is you have to have a legitimate, verifiable source for tactical training yourself or plug into it directly. So if you've never plugged into a tactical source, tactical means this stuff is used in real world principles against who? And I ask self-defense guys, who are you training your client for? Do you know the answer to that? It's a criminal encounter, not a sport or anything else. It's a criminal encounter to avoid and or survive a criminal event, a violent criminal event. That's what you're training these people for. And if you don't even know that, you're robbing them of the experience. So we allow guys to plug into our experience. We still train with law enforcement. I just got back from Boca Raton doing SWAT training down there. So our guys get to plug directly into our ongoing training. If you don't have that, if you don't have that verifiable source personally or that you train with directly, you're that nurse doing the brain surgeon's job. We're all in the combative field. The one thing I tell guys to do is know what you don't do. And a lot of guys will go, oh yeah, I'll teach that, when they don't. Like the real estate guy that when we're training instructors or clients and corporations are coming to us, and we always, they might ask us, what should I be looking for in a bully program? What should I be looking for in this? We don't talk about other systems or styles. We just try to qualify it by saying, ask them how they're uniquely qualified to teach your child how to protect themselves when you're not around. Do they do things like create a family plan? And we have that. Do they have a manual? We have that. Do they have a video backup system that you can refer to? Well, we have that. So be sure to ask those questions. Same thing with corporations. How are you uniquely qualified to teach our corporation active shooter? Well, I'm dual certified by multiple agencies in the active shooter program and developed this for that specific reason. So to qualify it, we specialize in self-defense, but we also specialize in knowing what we don't do. If I was doing jiu-jitsu with a jiu-jitsu master, that's their game. I'm tapping out in 20 seconds. That's their playbook, and that's their sport. I love that stuff, but that's not what we do. I would lose in a point taekwondo match in a heartbeat. But we specialize in self-defense. So always swim upriver and find out where the source is coming from, because in this industry, a lot of smoke and mirrors. You're teaching gun extractions. Where do you get that actual information? Because I've seen a lot of stuff out there that is negligible, could get someone killed.
I'm telling you, I just, how many videos have we seen of a 110-pound woman has a gun put to her head, she grabs the gun, moves to the side, which is good, and then takes a hand off of the gun and starts punching the guy.
There is a video online, and I call these magic shows. They're actually...
It is a truly magic show.
Yep.
Punch me as hard as you want. I'm jacked up. I'm ready to kill somebody. You're not going to hurt me with those punches, but you have half the power of control in that gun.
there's a lot of stuff online where if you see it, it looks very real, and it's marketing. It's either marketing a certain system or style, or it has some kind of marketing right at the end. It keeps you hooked. Like the little girl in the elevator who jumps and does a back kick. She's in a karate uniform. It's black and white and grainy. She jumps and back kicks this guy and shakes his head a couple times. This is a huge individual. I call those magic shows. But there is one that I love. A girl uses a shirt to choke out a guy, and I count 15 different moves she has to do with the shirt, with the guy not even fighting back. So you have to look at it. If you're a trained professional, you see stuff like that, you have to be able to tell your students, well, that's just marketing. It's not real. But be sure to ask these questions. If you want to find a trainer, ask these questions, qualify it, and then pick who you're comfortable with.
So when you say ask these questions, I think one that you're big on, what is the source of this information?
Correct.
And it needs to really go back to law enforcement. I think even more so than the military, because law enforcement is day in and day out on the streets dealing with scum and helping people as well. But military, they may never have a hand-to-hand encounter.
Correct, and that's some feedback we actually get from the military guys that join us as instructors. I've been doing this 25 years. I've never even seen action. That's not to take anything away from them.
Never.
However, when I punch on duty at 8 o'clock and I hear the alert tone and 365 copy a call, shots fired at this location, and you have to go beat down a door, you see a dead body, you got to step over it, you're looking for someone, there's smoke in the air, is there another person on scene? And then that guy runs out the window, you chase him with your gun out, tackle him, have to put your gun away so you don't shoot yourself in the face, detain them, and you hear your backup coming, but they're not there yet. That's real. That's just one call. That was a call that I was on. And when you do that year after year after year, when you stand in front of people and you see their body language and how they're getting a little nervous, does he have a weapon? The verbalization, the body language, everything, knowing when and how you can use all your weapons that you've been given, and then thinking about all the things all the laws that you have to make sure you understand so you don't lose your job. There's
Right.
a lot to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're continually training. So as a police officer, if you haven't pulled your gun, if you haven't pulled your gun in anger in a while, every 6 months they make sure you go to the range and qualify. And you have to do your defensive tactics. You have to go to places like Killer School, where it's the elite police academy, where whatever you did in the academy, we're going to times 10 over here and make it hurt so you own that technique. So when you're out in the field, you go home to your loved ones at night because it has to work.
I would contrast that to somebody who, if I never met Chris Sutton in Cobra, they asked me, well, Mr. Graydon, I'm considering enrolling my family for self-defense. Tell me about your background. Oh, well, I'm a world champion kickboxer. I'm a protege of Joe Louis. I'm on this cover, this, that. Good. That's exactly what I have said. And what I teach is very practical. Everybody says that. And what you just described blew my description out of the water.
Well, for the audience, this is a true story. So I teach self-defense, and I'm getting ready for my Joe Louis black belt test. And John Graydon's helping me spar, and I got kicked probably 3 times in 2 seconds in the side of my head. So because you're a self-defense instructor, as soon as you step into someone else's ring, you're in their ring. I was in his ring. He was getting me ready. But
He who?
John Graydon.
Oh, thank you.
Almost slipped and said Jim. Jim's kicked me quite a few times too. I think Mark has as well. So know what you do that well, and market in that direction. There's too much deviation in the industry, too much, because if you clump all the Quan, Itsu, Fu, Do's together, Susie in accounting has no idea what that is. In the first 20 minutes of you talking to her, you have to explain it. And then you have to say, don't you know Grandmaster so-and-so? And you're not really appealing to what she needs. She needs personal protection and safety because she saw some crazy story on the news. And you're just talking about who you are and what you've done. And that's the ego talking. I've done that.
Sure.
I've done that. But I've learned that when you sell to corporations and individuals, especially adults, and that's what's really appealing about this program. We have children's curriculum, but I love teaching adults. It's just much more fulfilling. I love teaching corporations. When you're standing there, and here's a for instance, Royal Caribbean. As a self-defense professional, you have to be able to describe they don't know what they don't know, and this is why. So when we went to Royal Caribbean, someone stood up and said, why do we need your training? Why do we need active shooter training? We're on a ship, and there's no guns. And I said, do people sneak liquor on your boat? Yeah. I could sneak a gun on, and this is how it will happen. I'll go to social media, and I'll friend a bunch of businesses in Belize or Ecuador or wherever the ports are. I'll overpay for a firearm that this criminal is going to steal from me. And I'll meet you at the port on this day. I'll give you 500 American dollars. That's probably more than he's going to make in a month. I'm going to walk right past the third world security when you go to Ecuador, it's not the same as America. I'm going to sneak that gun on board, an hour underway. I'm going to start shooting. None of you have training to deal with this situation. That's how it happens. And that's what a self-defense professional says.
That's a great answer.
Not, well, I would fight. No, you have to be very specific. And that's very specific.
Well, that's, I think, a good place to wrap it up. And a reminder that Chris Sutton, founder of Cobra, has Graydon footprints all over his face.
Thanks, John.
My pleasure.